The truth is a shattered mirror, and each fragment reflects a pain that will never heal. Prepare to witness how a family secret can implode lives, forcing impossible choices and revealing loves where least expected. Olivia watched her reflection in the mirror, not her own, but that of a life that refused to change. Her early 40s had arrived with a heavy baggage of unfulfilled expectations. Her apartment, a cramped nest in the heart of New York City, seemed to shrink every day, suffocating her dreams of space, of light, of a breath. She was a woman of routine, of silent sacrifices, a dedicated mother who had transformed the art of yielding into her own form of love. Sophia, her daughter, was the sun and moon in her sky, the reason for every effort, every renunciation. But even the purest love can become an invisible chain when the soul itself yearns for freedom. The sound of the kettle whistling in the kitchen brought Olivia back to reality. Another day began, another cup of bitter coffee to awaken the courage to face the sameness. She worked as an accountant at a small firm downtown, a stable job, yes, but one that drained her energy without fueling her passion. Her days were a succession of numbers, spreadsheets, and the persistent feeling that life was passing her by, like an express train that wouldn't make stops at her station. The desire for a larger, more beautiful apartment, with a balcony where she could grow her herbs and flowers, was almost an obsession. It wasn't just for luxury, but for space to breathe, to dream, to be. And, of course, there was the desire for a partner. Not a fairy tale prince, but someone real, a companion who would see her, value her, make her feel desired again. Someone who wasn't Robert. Robert. The name echoed in her mind like a ghost from a distant past, yet one that insisted on haunting her present. Her ex-husband, Sophia's father, a brilliant mathematician, but a man lost in his own calculations and abstractions. They had divorced years ago, but life, with its peculiar irony, had found a way to keep them connected in a way Olivia could never have foreseen. Sophia, on the other hand, was the personification of youth and ambition. In her early 20s, she worked tirelessly at an advertising agency in Los Angeles, dreaming of independence, of her own place in the world. She was beautiful, intelligent, with a sparkle in her eyes that Olivia felt she had lost somewhere along the journey. But Sophia also carried a weariness, an exhaustion that Olivia recognized. The search for a love that would fulfill her, that would pull her out of her mother's shadow, was evident in every choice, in every relationship. And it was this search that led her to Robert. The news had dropped like a bomb, shattering the fragile peace Olivia had built. Sophia and Robert. Her ex-husband and her daughter. Olivia's mind refused to process the information, to fit the pieces of this macabre puzzle together. It was a nightmare, a cruel joke of fate. But Sophia was serious, her eyes shining with a mixture of defiance and a happiness Olivia couldn't comprehend. "He's moving in here, Mom," Sophia had said, her voice firm, but with an almost imperceptible tremor. "We decided it's for the best. To save money, to be closer." Olivia felt the air thin in her lungs. The apartment, already small, seemed to shrink even more, the walls closing in on her. Robert, the man who had once been her husband, her daughter's father, would now be her son-in-law. And he would live under the same roof. The idea was absurd, grotesque, an affront to everything she believed about family, about boundaries, about decency. Robert's arrival was a silent earthquake. He brought with him a worn suitcase, a few math books, and an aura of melancholy that Olivia knew well. His eyes, once full of intellectual brilliance, now seemed duller, tired. He was the same Robert, but also a stranger, an intruder who was there for her daughter, but who, in some way, was also there for her. The tension in the air was palpable, an invisible thread connecting the three, threatening to snap at any moment. Olivia tried to maintain her composure, the mask of the understanding mother, but inside, a whirlwind of emotions consumed her. Anger, disbelief, a pang of jealousy that shamed her. How could Sophia do this? How could Robert accept? The age difference between them was glaring, an abyss Olivia saw as insurmountable. She saw Sophia's innocence, the desperate search for a love that would validate her, and she saw in Robert the figure of a man who, in her view, could not offer the stability and happiness her daughter deserved. One evening, while Sophia and Robert were in their room, muffled laughter reaching the living room, Olivia collapsed on the sofa. The tears, which she had held back for days, finally rolled down her face. She felt betrayed, humiliated, as if her own life was being dismantled piece by piece. The dream of the larger apartment, the ideal partner, everything seemed to crumble before that new and disturbing reality. Then the phone rang. It was Patricia, her longtime friend, the only person Olivia felt comfortable confiding in. Patricia, with her contagious energy and keen insight, listened patiently to Olivia's account, her voice choked, the pain evident in every word. "Olivia, you can't let this happen," Patricia said, her voice firm, but full of affection. "Sophia needs to see the truth. She needs to understand that Robert isn't the man for her. And you're the only one who can show her that." Olivia sniffled. "But how, Patricia? How can I do that without destroying our family for good?" Patricia paused, and when she spoke again, her voice had a tone of conspiracy, of defiance. "You're going to seduce him, Olivia. You're going to show Sophia that Robert is a weak man, that he's not worthy of her. You're going to steal him back, not for love, but to open your daughter's eyes." Olivia's eyes widened. The idea was shocking, outrageous, but a spark of something new, something daring, ignited within her. Seduce Robert? Her ex-husband, her daughter's father, who was now her daughter's boyfriend. It was madness, an affront to morality, but what if it worked? What if it was the only way to save Sophia from a mistake Olivia saw as catastrophic? Patricia's proposal, however absurd it seemed, planted a seed of rebellion in Olivia's heart. She had spent her entire life being the responsible woman, the selfless mother, the understanding ex-wife. But perhaps it was time to break the rules, to do something unexpected, something that would pull her out of inertia. The idea of intervening in Sophia and Robert's relationship, of showing her daughter the inadequacy of the relationship due to the age difference, began to take shape in her mind. It wasn't for revenge, it wasn't for jealousy, she tried to convince herself. It was for love of Sophia, for a desperate desire to protect her. That same week, driven by a new and strange energy, Olivia began looking for a new job. She wanted more than just a salary, she wanted purpose, a challenge that would make her feel alive again. She opened herself to new possibilities, to a world that seemed to have closed off to her long ago. The idea of seducing Robert was a risky plan, perhaps even immoral, but it was a plan. And, for the first time in a long time, Olivia felt a pang of adrenaline, a sense that her life, finally, was about to change. Olivia's decision to seduce Robert was not an act of revenge, nor of passion. It was a cold, calculated strategy, born of a mother's desperation who saw her daughter heading towards what she considered an abyss. But, at the same time, something within her had awakened. A spark of her old self, the woman who had once been desired, who had ambitions and a fire that life had, little by little, stifled. The search for a new job, which was previously just a necessity, transformed into a symbol of this rediscovery. She wanted more, she deserved more, and she was willing to fight for it. The following days were a delicate and dangerous dance. Olivia began to observe Robert with a different gaze, no longer that of the distant ex-husband or her daughter's father, but that of a man she needed to unravel to fulfill her plan. She noticed his habits, his quirks, the way he got lost in his math books, oblivious to the world around him. There was a vulnerability in him, a loneliness that Olivia recognized, for she felt it too. The first attempt was subtle, almost imperceptible. A longer conversation in the kitchen, a smile that lingered a little longer, an accidental touch on the arm as they passed each other. Robert, immersed in his thoughts, seemed not to notice, or perhaps preferred to ignore. Sophia, in turn, was absorbed in her own romance, her eyes shining with youthful passion, blind to the tensions accumulating under the same roof. Olivia began to take better care of herself. She bought some new, more vibrant clothes that accentuated her figure. She started wearing more striking lipstick, a perfume that made her feel more confident. It wasn't for Robert, she told herself, but for her. For the woman who was being reborn from the ashes of a monotonous life. And, with this new attitude, came a new energy. Her job search led her to a book publishing house, a place that, for her, seemed like a refuge of ideas and stories. The interview was with the director, a man named Stephen. He was elegant, with a penetrating gaze and a welcoming smile. Stephen was not a man of overwhelming passions, but of a kindness and intelligence that Olivia found immediately attractive. He listened to her attentively, interested in her experience, but also in her story, in her dreams. "You have a light, Olivia," Stephen had said, his eyes fixed on hers. "A strength that even you don't seem to recognize. I believe you would be a valuable asset to our team." The job offer came a few days later, and Olivia accepted it with a mixture of relief and euphoria. It was a financial management position, with a salary that would finally allow her to dream of the larger apartment, of the independence she so longed for. But it was more than that. It was a new beginning, a door opening to a world of possibilities. And Stephen, with his discreet admiration, seemed to be part of this new world. As Olivia ventured into her new professional life, the situation at home became increasingly complex. Sophia and Robert, though in love, began to face the first cracks in their relationship. The age difference, which Olivia so feared, began to manifest itself in small things, in interests, expectations, the way they saw the future. Robert, with his mind immersed in equations and theories, often seemed distant, indifferent to Sophia's emotional needs. She, in turn, felt increasingly alone, seeking in Robert a stability that he, in his own instability, could not offer. Olivia watched everything with a mixture of satisfaction and pain. Her plan to seduce Robert seemed to be working, not through her direct actions, but through the very dynamic of their relationship. She saw Sophia becoming disillusioned, and that broke her heart, even if it was what she had predicted. One evening, Sophia came home with tear-filled eyes. Robert was in his room, engrossed in his books. Olivia hugged her, feeling the tremor in her daughter's body. "He doesn't understand me, Mom," Sophia sobbed, the words barely audible. "He lives in his own world. I need someone who sees me, who is present." Olivia felt a pang in her chest. It was what she wanted, but seeing her daughter's pain still hurt her. "What about David?" she asked cautiously. Sophia lifted her head, her eyes still red, but with a spark of defiance. "You don't understand, Mom. He's different. He makes me feel things no one else does." The conversation was interrupted by the doorbell. It was David, a colleague of Sophia's, a charming man with an easy smile and an aura of confidence. Olivia knew him by sight and had always found him a little elusive. But Sophia seemed enchanted. David brought Sophia flowers, and their eyes met with an intensity that Olivia didn't like. "Sophia, can we talk?" David asked, his voice soft, but with an urgency that didn't escape Olivia. Sophia hesitated, looked at Robert's room, then at Olivia, and finally at David. "Sure, David. Come in. Olivia felt a chill. This man did not inspire her trust. But Sophia seemed hypnotized. The seed of doubt that Olivia was trying to plant regarding Robert seemed to be planted by David regarding him. In the following days, Sophia and David became inseparable. The arguments between Sophia and Robert became more frequent, more intense. Robert, in turn, seemed increasingly indifferent, engrossed in his research, as if the outside world didn't affect him. But Olivia saw the pain in his eyes, the way he recoiled when Sophia ignored him. The central emotional turning point was approaching, and Olivia felt it in the air. The house, which was once a refuge, was now a silent battlefield, where hearts were broken and new passions bloomed, or at least seemed to bloom. Olivia felt torn amidst it all. On one hand, her plan seemed to be coming to fruition. On the other, Sophia's pain and Robert's loneliness affected her in a way she hadn't expected. She was playing a dangerous game, and the consequences were beginning to show. David's presence in Olivia's apartment was like a discordant note in an already complex melody. He exuded a confidence that Olivia found forced, a charm that seemed rehearsed. But Sophia, in her search for a love that would validate her, seemed blind to the warning signs her mother perceived. Sophia's youthful passion for Robert waned, replaced by an intense and, for Olivia, dangerous attraction to David. The arguments between Sophia and Robert became more frequent, more acrimonious. Small disagreements turned into major quarrels, revealing the growing incompatibility between them. Robert, in his introspective nature, retreated, closing himself off even further into his world of numbers and theories. He was not a man of confrontations, and Sophia's emotional intensity frightened him. Olivia watched everything with a mixture of sadness and a strange satisfaction. Her plan to save Sophia seemed to be coming to fruition, but the emotional cost for everyone was high. One afternoon, Olivia came home from work to find Sophia crying uncontrollably in the living room. David wasn't there. Robert was in his room, the door closed, the silence heavy. Olivia sat beside her daughter, hugging her tightly. "What happened, my love?" Olivia asked, her voice soft. "I broke up with Robert, Mom," Sophia sobbed, the words almost inaudible. "I can't take it anymore. He doesn't see me, he doesn't listen to me. I feel alone with him." Olivia felt a bitter relief. It was what she wanted, but seeing her daughter's pain still hurt her. "What about David?" she asked cautiously. Sophia lifted her head, her eyes still teary, but with a spark of hope. "David is different, Mom. He understands me. He makes me feel alive. We're going to stay together." At that moment, Olivia felt a chill. Sophia's joy seemed forced, almost desperate. But she said nothing. She simply hugged her daughter, letting her cry on her shoulder. News of the breakup spread through the house like wildfire. Robert emerged from his room, his eyes red, his face pale. He didn't say a word, just picked up his worn suitcase and began to pack his few belongings. Olivia felt a pang of guilt. She had wished for this, but not this way, not with so much pain. "Robert, where are you going?" Olivia asked, her voice choked. He looked at her, and for a moment, Olivia saw the deep pain in his eyes. "I don't know, Olivia. I have nowhere to go." Those words struck Olivia like lightning. Robert, her daughter's father, the man with whom she had shared so many years of her life, was homeless. The image of a weak and unworthy man she had built began to crumble. She saw the brilliant mathematician, the man who got lost in his thoughts, but who, deep down, was just a vulnerable human being. "You're not going anywhere," Olivia said, her voice firm, resolute. "You're staying here. You're Sophia's father. This house is yours too. Robert looked at her with surprise, then with silent gratitude. He didn't argue. He simply put the suitcase away and returned to the room, now like a friend living under the same roof, an unexpected guest in his own former home. The family dynamic had radically changed. Olivia and Robert, now both single, lived in a strange coexistence, navigating the murky waters of a shared past and an uncertain present. Despite the new configuration, Olivia's life at the publishing house flourished. Stephen, the director, showed an increasingly obvious interest in her. He invited her to business lunches that extended into conversations about art, literature, and life. He saw her, appreciated her, and that was balm for Olivia's soul. She felt desired, intelligent, alive. Encouraged by Patricia, who now saw her as a woman on the rise, Olivia decided to explore the world of online dating. Patricia, with her contagious enthusiasm, helped her create a profile on a dating app, choose the best photos, and write a description that highlighted Olivia's vibrant personality. "You have to open yourself to new things, Olivia," Patricia exclaimed. "The world is full of wonderful men waiting for a woman like you." Olivia plunged into this digital universe with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. The first few dates were a succession of comical and disastrous situations. There was the man who only talked about his stamp collection, the one who seemed more interested in her bank account than her soul, and the one who constantly complained about his ex-wife. Olivia laughed with Patricia about these situations, but deep down, she felt a pang of disappointment. Finding true love seemed like a Herculean task. Robert, meanwhile, was also encouraged by Olivia to try dating apps. She felt he needed to reconnect with the world, to break out of his mathematical bubble. He, initially reluctant, eventually gave in. His dates were even more disastrous than Olivia's. He talked about differential equations on the first date, the theory of relativity on the second, and women invariably fled. One evening, Olivia and Robert sat in the living room, each on their phone, scrolling through profiles and exchanging meaningful glances. They shared the weirdest stories, the funniest photos, and laughed together, like old friends who understood each other without many words. At that moment, the tension between them seemed to have eased, replaced by an unexpected lightness. They were two castaways in a sea of online dating, finding solace in each other's company. Meanwhile, Sophia was increasingly smitten with David. He showered her with gifts, expensive dinners, and promises of a bright future. Sophia was on cloud nine, convinced she had found the ideal man. Olivia, however, felt a growing unease. There was something about David that didn't add up, a falseness in his smile, a calculating glint in his eyes. She tried to warn Sophia, but her daughter, blinded by passion, wouldn't listen. Olivia's life was in full swing. A new job, an interested director, the adventure of online dating, and Robert's strange but comforting presence in her home. She was rediscovering herself, allowing herself to feel, to dream. But David's shadow over Sophia was a constant concern, a premonition that not everything was as good as it seemed. The strange harmony that had settled between Olivia and Robert was a balm amidst the storm brewing around Sophia. They had found a rhythm, a complicity that surprised them every day. Evenings were filled with the soft click of Robert's keyboard as he rebuilt his research, and Olivia's voice helping him organize his thoughts. There was an intellectual intimacy, a mutual respect that blossomed amidst adversity. The apartment, once a scene of conflict, was now a refuge of support and rediscovery. But the peace was fragile. With each unanswered call from Sophia, each unreturned message, Olivia's worry grew. David had become a shadow, a veil that obscured her daughter. Olivia's attempts to reach out were met with coldness, with flimsy excuses about a new life, a new routine. Robert, with his keen insight, also noticed Sophia's change in behavior, and his eyes, once lost in equations, now held a shadow of concern. At work, Olivia's career continued to flourish. Stephen, the publishing house director, had become more than a colleague or an admirer. He was a friend, a confidant, someone who listened and understood her. He invited her to spend a weekend at his country house, an invitation Olivia accepted with hesitation. It was an opportunity to break free from the tension at home, to breathe, to allow herself a moment of happiness. Stephen's country house was a haven of peace, surrounded by nature and offering breathtaking views. Stephen was an impeccable host, attentive and entertaining. They walked, talked, laughed. Olivia felt light, free, as she hadn't been in years. Stephen looked at her with sincere admiration, and Olivia found herself imagining a future by his side, a future of peace, stability, and love. He was everything she had dreamed of. Yet, even amidst this happiness, Sophia's image never left her thoughts. One evening, as they dined by candlelight, Olivia decided to share her worries with Stephen. He listened attentively, offering thoughtful advice and a shoulder to lean on. "Olivia, a mother's love is one of the strongest there is," Stephen said, holding her hand. "But sometimes, we have to let our children learn their own lessons, even if it means seeing them suffer." Stephen's words were wise, but they didn't soothe Olivia's heart. She felt that something was about to happen, a dark premonition hanging over her daughter. Back at the apartment, the tension was palpable. Robert had tried to contact Sophia, but without success. He, too, felt that something was wrong. The complicity between him and Olivia grew stronger, united by their concern for their daughter. They formed a united front, two parents facing an unknown threat. One morning, the phone rang. It was Sophia, her voice trembling, barely audible. "Mom, I need your help. I'm in trouble." Olivia's heart pounded. She looked at Robert, who had already sensed the urgency in her voice. "Where are you, Sophia? What happened?" Sophia, between sobs, explained that David had disappeared with all her savings, leaving her with debts and a broken heart. He had been a con artist, a manipulator who had taken advantage of her vulnerability. The dream of a bright future had turned into a nightmare. Olivia felt a wave of anger, then a deep sadness. Her worst fears had come true. She looked at Robert, and in his eyes, she saw the same pain, the same determination. "We're coming for you, my love," Olivia said, her voice firm, but full of tenderness. "Tell us where you are." Sophia was at a friend's house in Miami, ashamed and devastated. Olivia and Robert didn't hesitate. They packed a small bag and left immediately, united by a common purpose, to rescue their daughter. The journey was long, filled with a heavy silence, broken only by Olivia's occasional sobs and Robert's comforting hand on her arm. When they arrived in Miami, Sophia was a shadow of her former self. Her eyes were hollow, her face pale, her spirit broken. Olivia hugged her tightly, feeling her daughter's fragile body tremble. Robert, in turn, approached with a gentleness Olivia hadn't seen in years. He sat beside Sophia, listening patiently to her story, offering words of comfort and reassurance. "It's not your fault, Sophia," Robert said, his voice calm. "He was a professional. He took advantage of your good heart." Sophia cried, letting out all the pain she had held inside. Olivia and Robert stayed by her side, a silent promise of unconditional love and support. The apartment, once a symbol of conflict, was now a sanctuary of healing. The following days were a slow process of recovery. Sophia, surrounded by her parents' love, began to regain her strength. Olivia and Robert, in turn, rediscovered a deeper connection, a shared purpose that transcended their past differences. They were a family, united by adversity, stronger than ever. Olivia realized that the ideal partner she had dreamed of, the perfect apartment, all seemed insignificant in the face of the real love that was being rebuilt in her home. Stephen, with his perfect life, now seemed distant, almost irrelevant. The true happiness was there, in the imperfect reality of her family, in the strength of the bonds that united them. One evening, as Sophia slept peacefully in her room, Olivia and Robert sat in the living room, holding hands. The silence was no longer heavy, but comforting. "Thank you, Robert," Olivia said, her voice soft. "For everything. For being here." Robert squeezed her hand. "Always, Olivia. Always." In that moment, Olivia knew she had made the right choice. Not the ideal choice, but the real one. The one that brought her peace, love, and the certainty that, no matter what, her family would always be her safe harbor. The return to New York City was a journey of silent healing. Sophia, still fragile, leaned on her parents, finding comfort in their unwavering presence. The apartment, once a battleground of unspoken resentments, now felt like a sanctuary, a place where wounds could mend and new beginnings could take root. Olivia and Robert, united by their shared ordeal, moved with a quiet understanding, their actions speaking louder than words. Sophia's recovery was a slow, arduous process. The emotional scars left by David ran deep, affecting her self-esteem and her trust in others. She spent her days in a haze of sadness, often retreating to her room, the vibrant young woman Olivia knew replaced by a quiet, withdrawn shadow. Olivia and Robert, with infinite patience, offered a constant stream of support, ensuring Sophia knew she was loved, valued, and not alone. Olivia, in her moments of reflection, found herself re-evaluating her life's priorities. The allure of Stephen's perfect world, the dream of a larger, more beautiful apartment, now seemed distant and superficial. True happiness, she realized, lay not in external achievements or idealized relationships, but in the messy, imperfect reality of her family. The love she shared with Robert, a love forged in adversity and rediscovered through shared pain, felt more profound and real than anything she had ever imagined. At the publishing house, Stephen noticed a change in Olivia. Her usual vibrant energy was tinged with a newfound seriousness, a quiet strength that intrigued him. He continued to pursue her, inviting her to dinners and cultural events, but Olivia's responses were now tinged with a gentle distance. Her heart, once open to the possibility of a new romance, was now fully invested in her family's healing. One evening, Stephen invited Olivia to a prestigious literary gala. It was an event she would have once eagerly anticipated, a chance to shine in her new professional world. But as she considered the invitation, her thoughts drifted to Sophia, still struggling, and to Robert, quietly supportive. "Stephen," Olivia said, her voice kind but firm, "I appreciate the invitation, but I can't go. My daughter needs me right now." Stephen, though disappointed, understood. He saw the depth of her commitment, the unwavering strength of her maternal love. He realized that Olivia's priorities had shifted, and that his place in her life, if any, would have to adapt to this new reality. Meanwhile, Robert, with his characteristic quiet determination, began to rebuild his life. He found a part-time consulting position that allowed him to work from home, giving him the flexibility to be present for Sophia. He also started volunteering at a local community center, teaching math to underprivileged children. This new purpose, combined with the renewed connection with Olivia and Sophia, brought a lightness to his spirit that had been missing for years. The apartment, once a symbol of Olivia's unfulfilled desires, was slowly transforming into a true home. The small balcony, once neglected, now bloomed with herbs and flowers, a testament to Olivia's renewed hope. The cat, affectionately named Olivia by Olivia herself, curled up on the sofa, a silent observer of the family's quiet resilience. Sophia, seeing her parents' unwavering love and support, slowly began to emerge from her shell. She started attending a support group for victims of emotional scams, finding solace and strength in sharing her story with others who had experienced similar pain. She also began to explore new career paths, realizing that her passion for advertising had been tainted by her experience with David. One afternoon, as Olivia and Robert sat in the living room, Sophia joined them, a tentative smile on her face. "Mom, Dad," she said, her voice still soft, but with a newfound clarity, "I've decided to go back to school. I want to study social work. I want to help people who have been through what I have." Olivia and Robert looked at each other, their eyes filled with pride and relief. It was a turning point, a sign that Sophia was not only healing but also finding a new purpose, a new direction in her life. "That's a wonderful idea, Sophia," Olivia said, her voice thick with emotion. "We'll support you every step of the way." Robert nodded, a rare, genuine smile gracing his lips. "We're so proud of you, sweetheart." In that moment, Olivia realized that her life, though far from the idealized version she had once envisioned, was richer and more meaningful than ever before. She had found love, not in a fairy tale, but in the imperfect, resilient reality of her family. The journey had been arduous, filled with pain and uncertainty, but it had ultimately led her to a place of profound peace and unwavering love. The apartment, once a silent witness to unspoken desires and simmering conflicts, now resonated with a newfound warmth and purpose. Sophia's decision to pursue social work had ignited a spark of hope, not just in her, but in Olivia and Robert as well. It was a testament to her resilience, a beacon guiding them all towards a brighter future. The cat, still affectionately named Olivia, seemed to purr with contentment, a furry guardian of their evolving harmony. Sophia, now fully committed to her studies, found solace and strength in her new path. The support group became a vital part of her healing, a space where she could share her vulnerabilities and empower others. She channeled her pain into empathy, her past trauma into a powerful drive to make a difference. Olivia and Robert watched her blossom, their hearts swelling with pride, seeing the vibrant young woman they knew slowly re-emerge, stronger and more compassionate than ever. Olivia, too, found renewed purpose in her life. Her work at the publishing house continued to thrive, but her focus had shifted. The ambition for a grander life, a perfect partner, had been replaced by a deep appreciation for the present. She found joy in the small moments, a shared laugh with Robert over a quirky online dating profile, a quiet evening spent reading with Sophia, the simple act of tending to her balcony garden. Her relationship with Stephen, though still friendly, had gracefully transitioned into a professional one, free from romantic expectations. She had chosen the messy, beautiful reality of her family over an idealized fantasy, and in doing so, had found a profound sense of peace. Robert, in his quiet way, had also undergone a remarkable transformation. His consulting work allowed him to pursue his intellectual passions while remaining a present and engaged father. He found immense satisfaction in teaching math at the community center, his brilliant mind now applied to nurturing young minds. The isolation that once defined him had given way to a deep connection with his family and his community. He was no longer just a brilliant mathematician, he was a loving partner, a supportive father, and a man deeply rooted in the world around him. The evenings in the apartment became a cherished ritual. After dinner, they would gather in the living room, each engaged in their own pursuits, Olivia reading, Robert immersed in his calculations, Sophia studying or connecting with her support group. But there was always a moment for shared stories, for laughter, for a comforting embrace. The apartment, once feeling small and confining, now felt expansive, a space of infinite possibilities, a home where every corner held a story of resilience and love. Olivia, reflecting on her journey, marveled at how far she had come. The overwhelmed and dissatisfied woman from the beginning of the story had transformed into a fulfilled, contented woman who had found happiness not in a distant ideal, but in the richness of her relationships and the strength of her family. She had learned that life wasn't about having the perfect apartment or the ideal partner, but about building a home with the people we love, accepting their imperfections and celebrating their qualities. Robert, observing Olivia, felt a profound gratitude. She had been the anchor that brought him back to reality, the light that guided him out of his mathematical bubble. He had rediscovered not only his love for her, but also his love for life, in all its complexities and beauties. He knew their journey hadn't been easy, but every obstacle overcome had strengthened the bond that united them. Sophia, seeing her parents' happiness, felt her own heart heal. She had found peace in her home, in the presence of her parents, and in the certainty that, despite all adversities, she was not alone. The family, now more united and resilient than ever, was ready to face the future, together, with the certainty that true love always finds a way. The apartment, once a stage for unspoken desires and simmering conflicts, now vibrated with a palpable sense of peace and belonging. Sophia's journey of healing and self-discovery had been a catalyst, not just for her, but for Olivia and Robert as well. The cat, still affectionately named Olivia, often curled up on the sofa, a silent, purring testament to the quiet harmony that had settled over their home. Sophia, now deeply immersed in her social work studies, found profound meaning in her new path. Her past pain, once a heavy burden, had transformed into a wellspring of empathy and a fierce determination to help others. She excelled in her studies, her intelligence shining through, and her contributions to the support group for victims of emotional scams became invaluable. Olivia and Robert watched her with immense pride, witnessing the emergence of a strong, compassionate young woman who had not only healed but had also found her true calling. Olivia, in turn, felt a profound sense of fulfillment. Her career at the publishing house continued to flourish, but her perspective on success had shifted. The pursuit of an idealized life had given way to a deep appreciation for the present, for the authentic connections that truly mattered. She found joy in the simple rhythms of daily life, preparing meals with Robert, sharing stories with Sophia, tending to her vibrant balcony garden. Her decision to choose the real, imperfect love she shared with Robert over the idealized vision of a perfect partner had brought her a peace she had never known. Robert, too, had found a new equilibrium. His consulting work allowed him to engage his brilliant mind while dedicating ample time to his family. His volunteer work at the community center, teaching math to children, brought him a sense of purpose and connection that his academic pursuits alone had never provided. He was no longer just a mathematician, he was a present father, a loving partner, and an active member of his community. The quiet man who once retreated into his own world had opened up, embracing the richness of human connection. The evenings in the apartment were a cherished ritual of togetherness. After dinner, they would gather in the living room, each engaged in their own activities, yet always connected. Olivia might be reading, Robert engrossed in his calculations, and Sophia studying or preparing for her support group meetings. But there was always time for shared laughter, for meaningful conversations, for the comforting embrace that spoke volumes. The apartment, once a symbol of their limitations, now felt expansive, a true home where every corner held a story of resilience, healing, and enduring love. Olivia, reflecting on her journey, understood that true happiness wasn't about achieving a perfect ideal, but about embracing the beautiful imperfections of life and the people in it. She had found love where she least expected it, a love that was forged in the fires of adversity and strengthened by shared vulnerability. Her dreams of a grander apartment and an idealized partner had faded, replaced by the profound joy of building a life with Robert and Sophia, a life rich in authentic connection and unconditional love. Robert, observing Olivia, felt a deep and abiding gratitude. She had been the anchor that pulled him back from the brink of isolation, the light that guided him towards a life of connection and purpose. He had rediscovered not only his love for her but also his love for life itself, in all its intricate beauty. Their journey had been fraught with challenges, but each obstacle overcome had only deepened the bond that united them, making them stronger, more resilient, and more passionately devoted to one another. Sophia, witnessing the profound happiness of her parents, felt her own heart heal completely. She had found peace in her home, in the unwavering presence of her parents, and in the certainty that, despite all adversities, she was not alone. The family, now more united and resilient than ever, stood ready to face the future, together, with the unwavering belief that true love always finds a way, even in the most unexpected places. Life in Olivia, Robert, and Sophia's apartment settled into a comforting new routine, though not without its challenges. Sophia's healing was a slow process, marked by moments of anger, sadness, and deep introspection. She had not only lost money but a part of her innocence and her trust in the world. Olivia and Robert, with a patience that life had taught them, were always there, offering a shoulder, a comforting word, or simply the understanding silence Sophia needed. Robert's presence in the apartment, now as Olivia's partner and a present father, was a pillar of stability. He had traded the relentless pursuit of academic recognition for the richness of human connections. His brilliant mind, once engrossed in equations, was now dedicated to finding ways to support Sophia in her healing and strengthen his bond with Olivia. They formed a team, navigating the turbulent waters of life with a new compass, love and complicity. Olivia, meanwhile, felt more fulfilled than ever. The decision to stay with Robert, to choose real, imperfect love over an idealized one, had brought her profound peace. She remained in her position at the publishing house, where she was valued and respected, but with a different perspective. The desire for a larger, more beautiful apartment hadn't completely vanished, but the urgency had faded. She had realized that the true beauty of a home lay not in its walls, but in the people who inhabited it. Evenings were filled with conversations in the living room, shared laughter, and the soft purr of Olivia the cat on someone's lap. Robert, with his peculiar humor, would tell stories of his dating app mishaps, and Olivia would compliment his tales with her quick wit. Sophia gradually began to participate, her smile becoming more frequent, her eyes regaining some of their lost sparkle. Olivia and Robert's reconciliation was not a fairy tale, but a realistic and intense romance, built on a shared history, mistakes and successes, losses and rediscoveries. They had learned to appreciate each other's presence, to accept imperfections, and to celebrate the strength of their bond. Their love was mature, deep, and manifested in the small daily gestures: coffee made in the morning, a firm embrace after a difficult day, an understanding glance that said more than 1,000 words. Sophia, observing her parents' new dynamic, began to reevaluate her own choices and expectations regarding love. The experience with David had taught her a painful lesson about appearances and empty promises. She realized that true love was not a fairy tale, but a daily construction, based on trust, respect, and authentic connection. She began to dedicate herself more to her work, to invest in herself, to rebuild her self-esteem. Gradually, Sophia began to open up to the world again. She reconnected with friends, sought new activities, and, most importantly, began to forgive herself. Olivia and Robert were her greatest supporters, showing her that life went on and that love, in its various forms, was always present. One afternoon, as Olivia and Sophia sat on the balcony, tending to the herbs and flowers Olivia had planted, Sophia turned to her mother. "Mom," she said softly, "I understand now. About Robert. About you too." Olivia looked at her, curious. "What have you understood, my love?" Sophia smiled, a sincere smile that lit up her face. I've understood that love isn't perfect. That it's complicated, full of ups and downs. But the most important thing is to have someone who is there, who truly sees you, who supports you, even when you make mistakes. And you too, you have that. Olivia felt her eyes well up. It was the acceptance she had longed for, proof that Sophia was maturing, that she had understood the depth of the love that united them. She hugged her daughter, feeling the lightness of a weight lifted from her shoulders. The family, now complete and strengthened, was ready for a new beginning. The apartment, once a symbol of its limitations, was now a sanctuary of love, healing, and hope. Olivia and Robert had found happiness not in a distant ideal, but in rediscovering each other and in building a home where love, in its purest and most real form, flourished. Life in Olivia, Robert, and Sophia's apartment, though marked by the scars of the past, blossomed with a new vitality. The presence of Olivia the cat, who now nestled with equal tenderness on everyone's laps, was a constant reminder of the harmony that had been restored. Evenings were filled with the warmth of conversations, the sound of laughter, and the sense of belonging that each had found in this rebuilt home. Sophia, with time, began to flourish again. The pain of David's betrayal had transformed into a driving force for her personal growth. She dedicated herself ardently to her new job, seeking not only financial independence but also the rebuilding of her self-esteem. She had learned the most valuable lesson, that true happiness does not lie in material possessions or empty promises, but in the solidity of family bonds and the authenticity of feelings. She became a more mature, more resilient woman, with a keener insight into people and life. Olivia and Robert, meanwhile, lived a romance that was the antithesis of fairy tales, but which was, in its essence, much deeper and more real. They had rediscovered a love that had been buried under years of resentment and unfulfilled expectations. Their love was not about a consuming passion, but about complicity, respect, mutual support, and the acceptance of each other's imperfections. They were partners in life, in challenges, and in joys. Robert, with his brilliant mind, continued to work as a consultant, but now with a new perspective. He had found a balance between his passion for mathematics and the importance of his family. He spent hours in the living room, engrossed in his calculations, but always with an attentive ear to Olivia and Sophia's conversations, participating with a perceptive comment or an unexpected joke. He had become a more present man, more connected to the world around him. Olivia, observing Robert, felt a deep tenderness. She saw the man he had become, the devoted father, the attentive partner. The image of the ideal partner she had dreamed of, with his larger apartment and perfect life, had dissolved, giving way to a much richer and more meaningful reality. She had found happiness not in the pursuit of an ideal, but in the acceptance of the love that already existed in her life, in its most authentic and imperfect form. The family, now more united than ever, began to create new traditions. Family dinners, walks in the park, movie nights in the living room. Small moments that became great memories, building a solid foundation for the future. Sophia, seeing her parents' happiness, felt her own heart heal. She had found peace in her home, in the presence of her parents, and in the certainty that, despite all adversities, she was not alone. One afternoon, as Olivia and Robert sat on the sofa, reading, Sophia approached, a smile on her lips. "Mom, Dad," she said softly, "I wanted to thank you. For everything. For taking me back, for supporting me, for showing me what true love is." Olivia and Robert looked at each other, then at their daughter. Olivia reached out her hand, and Sophia sat between them, enveloped in a warm embrace. It was a moment of pure emotion, gratitude, and unconditional love. "You are our greatest treasure, Sophia," Olivia said, her voice choked. And we will always be there for you. Robert nodded, kissing his daughter's forehead. Always. In that embrace, the family felt complete. The grudges of the past had been overcome, the wounds had healed, and love had triumphed. They had found redemption not in a fairy tale ending, but in the beauty of reality, in the strength of family bonds, and in the rediscovery of a love that, despite all twists and turns, had withstood time and adversity. The apartment, which once seemed small and cramped, was now a sanctuary of love, healing, and hope. Olivia and Robert had found happiness not in a distant ideal, but in rediscovering each other and in building a home where love, in its purest and most real form, flourished. Sophia, now more mature and resilient, accepted the new family dynamic, finding her own peace and her own path. With each passing day, Olivia, Robert, and Sophia's apartment became more than just a physical space. It was a sanctuary of memories, laughter, and a love that had been tested and proven. Olivia the cat, with her serene presence, seemed to bless the family's new phase, cuddling sometimes on one lap, sometimes on another, like a silent bond connecting the three. Life, with its complexities and twists, had taught each of them the true value of human connection. Sophia, now stronger and more resilient, had found a new purpose. Not only did she excel in her work, but she also dedicated part of her time to a support group for women who had been victims of emotional scams. Her own experience, once a source of shame, had transformed into a tool to help others, a testament to her ability to overcome adversity. She spoke with a clarity and empathy that only someone who had gone through the pain could possess, and her voice became a beacon of hope for many. Olivia watched her daughter with a pride that barely fit in her chest. The naive girl who had fallen in love with David had transformed into a mature woman, aware of her strength and worth. The relationship between mother and daughter had deepened, built on a foundation of honesty, vulnerability, and unconditional love. They were more than mother and daughter, they were friends, confidants, partners on life's journey. Robert, in turn, had found a peace that the relentless pursuit of academic recognition had never provided him. He continued to work on his research, but now with a lightness, a joy that he had previously lacked. He had realized that true genius lay not only in unraveling the mysteries of the universe but in building a universe of love and connection around him. He was a present father, an attentive partner, and a man who had learned to value the small joys of life. The love between Olivia and Robert was a testament to the human capacity to reinvent oneself, to forgive, and to rediscover passion in its most mature forms. They were not a magazine cover couple, but they were real, with their quirks, their silences, and their glances that said more than 1,000 words. They had built a love that was a safe harbor, a refuge amidst life's storms. Evenings in the apartment were a ritual of unity. After dinner, they would gather in the living room, each engaged in their own activity, Olivia reading a book, Robert engrossed in his calculations, Sophia working on her laptop or talking with the support group. But there was always a moment for exchange, for laughter, for an embrace. The apartment, which once seemed small and cramped, was now a space of infinite possibilities, a home where every corner told a story of overcoming, of love. Olivia, in her moments of reflection, realized how far she had come. The overwhelmed and dissatisfied woman from the beginning of the story had transformed into a fulfilled, contented woman who had found happiness not in a distant ideal, but in the richness of her relationships and the strength of her family. She had learned that life wasn't about having the perfect apartment or the ideal partner, but about building a home with the people we love, accepting their imperfections and celebrating their qualities. Robert, observing Olivia, felt a profound gratitude. She had been the anchor that brought him back to reality, the light that guided him out of his mathematical bubble. He had rediscovered not only his love for her but also his love for life, in all its complexities and beauties. He knew their journey hadn't been easy, but every obstacle overcome had strengthened the bond that united them, making them stronger, more resilient, more passionate. Sophia, seeing her parents' happiness, felt her own heart heal completely. She had found peace in her home, in the presence of her parents, and in the certainty that, despite all adversities, she was not alone. The family, now more united and resilient than ever, was ready to face the future, together, with the certainty that true love always finds a way, even in the most unexpected places. Time, with its silent wisdom, had woven new layers of meaning into the lives of Olivia, Robert, and Sophia. The apartment, once a scene of conflicts and unfulfilled longings, now pulsed with the energy of a home truly built on love and acceptance. Every object, every corner, seemed to hold the memory of a battle won, a tear wiped away, a smile shared. Olivia the cat, with her constant presence and soft purr, was the silent guardian of this new peace. Sophia, on her journey of self-discovery, had found a voice. Her participation in the support group for victims of emotional scams was not only a way to help others but also a path to her own healing. She had transformed pain into empathy, shame into strength. Her story, told with honesty and vulnerability, inspired many women to rise again, to believe in their own capacity for overcoming. Olivia and Robert, seeing her flourish, felt a pride that transcended any expectation. The relationship between Olivia and Robert had matured into a love that was like a fine wine, complex, deep, and improving with time. They had learned to navigate the waters of life together, accepting each other's imperfections and celebrating the qualities that made them unique. The small arguments, once sources of hurt, were now resolved with a glance, a smile, an embrace. The complicity between them was palpable, an invisible bond that united them on a level the initial marriage had never achieved. Robert, with his brilliant mind, continued to unravel the mysteries of mathematics, but now with the serenity that family life had provided him. He had found the perfect balance between his intellectual passion and the richness of human connections. He was a present father, an attentive partner, and a man who had learned to value the beauty of life in its simplest and deepest forms. His presence in the apartment was a safe harbor, an anchor of stability for Olivia and Sophia. Olivia, in turn, felt complete. The relentless pursuit of an ideal had given way to the acceptance of a much richer and more meaningful reality. She had found happiness not in a larger apartment or a perfect partner, but in the rediscovery of herself, in the strength of her family, and in the love that had been reborn from the ashes. She continued in her job at the publishing house, where she was a respected professional, but now with a life perspective that made her value every moment, every achievement. Evenings in the apartment were a ritual of unity and gratitude. After dinner, they would gather in the living room, sharing the day's stories, laughing at the small things, planning the future. The apartment, which once seemed small and cramped, was now a space of infinite possibilities, a home where every corner told a story of overcoming, of love, and of a happiness that had been conquered with resilience and courage. Olivia, in her moments of reflection, realized that life had given her much more than she had dreamed of. She had found a love that was real, a family that was strong, and a peace that transcended any material possession. She had learned that the true wealth of life was not in what one possessed, but in what one shared, in the connections one built, and in the love one cultivated. Robert, observing Olivia, felt a gratitude that overflowed. She had been the force that brought him back to life, the light that guided him out of his bubble of isolation. He had rediscovered not only his love for her but also his love for life, in all its complexities and beauties. He knew their journey hadn't been easy, but every obstacle overcome had strengthened the bond that united them, making them stronger, more resilient, more passionate. Sophia, seeing her parents' happiness, felt her own heart heal completely. She had found peace in her home, in the presence of her parents, and in the certainty that, despite all adversities, she was not alone. The family, now more united and resilient than ever, was ready to face the future, together, with the certainty that true love always finds a way, even in the most unexpected places. The morning sun streamed into Olivia's apartment, painting the walls with golden hues and warming the atmosphere. The smell of fresh coffee and toasted bread filled the kitchen, a familiar aroma that now represented the peace and stability they had achieved. Olivia the cat, lazily stretched out on the windowsill, watched the city's movement outside, oblivious to the complexity of the lives she shared, but an integral part of the new harmony. Sophia, now a fulfilled and confident woman, sat at the table, reviewing some documents for her work. Her eyes, once marked by pain and disillusionment, now shone with a light of purpose and resilience. The experience with David had been a scar, yes, but also a catalyst for her growth. She had learned to trust her intuition, to value the right people, and to build her own happiness, without depending on empty promises. She had found her voice and her place in the world, and her parents' unconditional support had been fundamental on this journey. Olivia watched her daughter with a smile on her face, her heart overflowing with gratitude. The overwhelmed and dissatisfied woman from the beginning of the story had transformed into an Olivia who radiated serenity and strength. She had found love where she least expected it, happiness in a home she had rebuilt with her own hands, and peace in accepting life in its most authentic form. The dream of the larger apartment and the ideal partner had dissolved, giving way to a much richer and more meaningful reality. She had learned that true love doesn't fit into predefined boxes, but molds itself to life's curves, growing and strengthening with each challenge. Robert, with his cup of coffee in hand, sat beside Olivia. His eyes, once lost in mathematical abstractions, now fixed on her with deep affection and silent admiration. He had found in Olivia not only his life partner but the anchor that brought him back to reality, the light that guided him out of his bubble of isolation. He had rediscovered not only his love for her but also his love for life, in all its complexities and beauties. His mathematical research, now recognized, was a part of his life, but no longer the totality. He had found a balance, a fullness that the relentless pursuit of recognition had never given him. They exchanged a glance, a smile that sealed years of history, of pain, of overcoming, and of an unexpected rediscovery. There was no need for words. That look said everything: forgiveness, complicity, the promise of a future together, built on the foundation of a mature and unwavering love. Sophia, noticing the exchange of glances between her parents, smiled. She had accepted the new family dynamic, not as a return to the past, but as a new beginning. She saw the love in her parents, a love that had withstood time and adversity, and this inspired her to seek her own version of happiness. The apartment, which one day seemed small and cramped, was now a home full of life, laughter, and conversations. It was a space where wounds had healed, where dreams had been rebuilt, and where love, in its purest and most real form, flourished. Olivia and Robert, after all the twists and turns, chose to stay together in the apartment they shared, rediscovering the love and complicity that had always been there, dormant. Sophia, now more mature, accepted the new family dynamic. Olivia and Robert are in the apartment, which now feels cozier and full of life. Sunlight streams through the window, illuminating the room. Sophia, smiling, watches her parents interact with affection and complicity. Olivia the cat, named after Olivia, snuggles comfortably between them on the sofa. There is a sense of peace and acceptance. Olivia and Robert exchange a meaningful glance, a smile that seals the rediscovery of love and the promise of a future together, in the home they built and rebuilt, surrounded by family affection. They hold hands, and the image closes on their intertwined fingers, a symbol of their union and the unwavering strength of their love.